What's up, folks? I'm Odd, by the way, and welcome back to the Bootleg Pokemon Challenge. This, if you're new here, is something that I've been doing for, is this episode 15? 15. A number. This is episode a number. We're running kind of low on this. I think I said something along the lines of like 25 or so episodes based off of the number of Pokemon that I had. Might have to recalculate that. I'm not sure. But the idea here basically is that I draw... Well, I do two. I draw in two ways. I pick a Pokemon, bootleg Pokemon, out of this bag, and these are little, like, itty-bitty bootleg Pokemon figurines, and then I proceed to draw them either based off of, with a unique trait, either based off of their bootlegged nature, or some sort of random trait that I decide I can ascribe to them. Sometimes, like I said, inspired by the design, sometimes inspired by the Pokemon in general, real-life traits, what have you. This got caught on my dresser. And yeah, it's just a fun time. I usually draw in threes, so I will be doing that. And this is just kind of a fun way to approach this in a random way, but in real life. And because these guys are really funny to look at. So let's just get started, shall we? You. Who? Spike. Moltres! Well, it's trying. Enhance. So we do have another legendary in this selection. I was wondering whether or not we still had them. Why is its tail off to the one side? Okay, what did I call you? Was it just I think it's just because it is a Woodstock looking derpy, just horrible looking critter. Fits right in with Zerpdos. Or Zertle, which I have already done. I don't know if I have all three of the legendary birds. I think it's just Zapdos and Moltres, but I could be wrong. But okay, that is our first selection. Do you stand? You do. So maybe the tail acts as a counterweight. Alright, next selection. You. What? Oh, it's Zorua! Enhance! Look at that mouth! Oh no! The child is so goofy. Oh, everything is wrong. Well, okay. But we got a pseudo-legendary, kind of, right? Like, Zorua, Zoroark were those Pokemon that were like, they were kind of special, like, event-style Pokemon, but they were not legendaries. I don't know if they were intended, this is like Gen 5, right? But they were intended to be Gen 6 or something like that. So yeah, okay. Interesting. Zorua. Doesn't look like one. Curious to see how I go about that. And we will go about our final selection here. Because I go in threes. And got two in my hand. This. Oh! It's a Wigglytuff. This one's not too bad. Enhance. You know, it's not like completely detailed, but it's not terrible either. It's pretty standard to look at, I would say. You know, it's got all of the features visible. It's basically an egg. So it's hard to mess up. And yeah. So, to pass over again, right? We have Legendary, Gen 5, 2 Gen 1 Pokemon, and a Gen 5 Pokemon. Interesting. Okay. Well, I'm gonna try and figure out what to do with these three. Off the top of my head, I have no idea because they are very random, as per usual, but especially more so in the selection. And we have another legend, which is always a challenge and a little bit of a treat to work with, so I'll show you what I've done with those in the Speed Pamp voiceover. See you there. So, because the legendaries are usually so much bigger, take longer to, and are generally just kind of main event sort of Pokemon, I've been leaving them for the end of these, despite when I take them out of the bag. I decided to start out with the Zorua instead, Because Zorua sort of resembles a gray fox, my mind went to that one Russian experiment where they were bred for temperament to understand kind of how domestication might change creatures. From what I've read since, even though the experiment went on for like decades, the resulting foxes were definitely tame, especially tamer than a standard fox, but also just not like fully domesticated. I think they just didn't change enough and weren't as integrated with humans as, say, dogs are. But they did resemble some traits we usually only see in domestic animals. Their coats changed, and I believe that their tails curled upward, which, if you've ever seen a fox or a wolf, their tails usually hang low. I decided to give the Zorua a little puppy play bow and changed her coat pattern a bit to resemble what I saw in the foxes. It seems they may also display this pattern when they're just like in captivity as well, but I didn't look too far into it. Regardless, she's got some white on her face and ruff, as well as at the end of her tail and back legs, and I lightened her base coat overall. I decided to name this girl Trouble. True to her name, Trouble can still be just as mischievous as your typical Zorua. Her transformation abilities are relatively unhindered, but she doesn't use them as much. They are a survival and battle tactic at the end of the day, so that makes sense. That isn't to say she never uses them, especially to play relatively harmless pranks on her trainer. She was initially sold to a rich family under the guise of being a fully domesticated Zorua, but quickly proved that claim might be dubious. She was abandoned at a Pokemon daycare, but later adopted by a poorer trainer who still spoils her to no end and likes her exactly as she is. Next up, we have the Wigglytuff. This one was more inspired by the facts I learned about this Pokemon when looking them up. I usually go to Bulbapedia articles to get a baseline on Pokemon, also just to look at some references. Great place to get PNGs for thumbnails, too. I saw it mentioned that Wigglytuffs are actually prized for their fur. It makes sense, because they resemble a rabbit, and Angora wool is made from Angora rabbits. The next part here seemed obvious then, because Angora are usually much longer-haired rabbits. I could make an Angora Wigglytuff. I believe this is my fourth long hair. Definitely the most common trait I've used so far, but this one is specific, okay? She's an Angora Wigglytuff. It makes perfect sense given the apparent way Wigglytuffs seem to exist in world. Why wouldn't someone opt to breed a long hair if their sheddings are already so valuable, and give their Wigglytuff a little trim in the spring instead for way more fur? I decided to name this girl Barb, mainly because I had a very specific idea for her in mind. Barb is sort of a mascot for a cosmetology school, thus her name, which is similar to Barber. The best ranking student at the end of the spring semester even gets to shear her fur, which leaves her with some fabulous styles. Her coif is the most difficult to work with, and the part that she's the most sensitive over. You need to have a steady hand and good demeanor to cut it, or she'll knock you out with sing. The fur is then sold, and a portion of it goes toward the chosen student's tuition or their pocket, sort of like a scholarship. The barbers adore her fluffy mustache. Finally, we have the Moltres. I've been over this before. The legends are weird because they're supposed to be unique, but the Kanto trio do have variants, so maybe it's not quite as weird for them. Maybe other Pokemon either opt to look like legends, which seems to be the case a lot, or certain legendaries are legends because they're just a single Pokemon who became a legend in some way or another. Moltres definitely seems to resemble a Fearow, or maybe the other way around, I don't know. And the legendary dogs, or beasts as we call them, all seem to be like spirits related to the relatively recent event that happened to that tower in Gen 2, the fire, or the lightning, the fire, and the water, or whatever. That is to say, maybe there are specific events or circumstances that can result in a legendary Pokemon, and maybe there can be more than one outside of the weird pocket universes each Pokemon player seems to open up. For this variant, I decided to play with another kind of extreme situation sort of vibe and make a superheated Moltres that was also multiple colors of flame, like when fire burns at different temperatures and when certain metals are added to it. I considered a rainbow, but I didn't quite know how to execute it and felt like that it would be stepping on Ho-Oh's toes as well as not quite fitting the vibe, I guess. I wound up using more cool colors instead, specifically mostly green, and named this variant after the Greek god of fire and craftspeople, specifically blacksmiths, Hephaestus. Hephaestus is a legend among a secluded group of smiths in a particular mountainous region who all claim to have seen it. This particular version of Moltres is superheated and also regularly burning the particulates of metals existing in the area, resulting in some striking colors. Its feathers are also a steel gray. Some posit this Pokemon was the first to teach man about blacksmithy because it requires such high temperatures to achieve. It's also occasionally reported by glassmakers and the occasional potter. Some tradesfolk in the area sport rainbow blades and vibrant raku pottery that seems to have been a gift from the Firebird itself, applauding their passions. But those are my Pokemon for this week. Which one turned out your favorite? I love Trouble, but Hephaestus seems to be such a cool concept, and apparently I have some preference for long-haired Pokemon, so I don't fully know myself. Probably still Trouble. Give this video a like if you liked it, and be sure to subscribe to check out future videos of this series and all the other fun art stuff I do in the future. It's not all Pokemon, but it is still pretty nerdy, and I think that you would like it. At that, though, I'll leave this here, and I'll see y'all next time.